There we go. Hey everyone, welcome to the second episode of 5 Minute Fill-Ups, Resilience in Practical Terms. I'm Carla Cheatham, for those of you who don't know me. So my apologies for running late, working on connection issues, and I'm working on my technology learning curve. So before we get started, a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, how long do you think you would be best served by these videos being? I initially wanted to take all of my content and pare it down into 15-minute fill-ups for professionals and 5-minute fill-ups for family caregivers and the average bear, thinking that most people probably don't have the attention span or the bandwidth these days to take in much more information, and that many people, especially family caregivers, might not have enough time or feel like they have enough time to do more than 5 minutes. I know 30 minutes is too long. I know 5 minutes may be too short for trying to get all the content that I want in, even if I do these daily, which I'm playing around with the idea of doing. So post into the comments and let me know, what do you think would be a good time? I know Lynn McPherson fell asleep with the one that I did last week as kind of a beta test for the series. That wound up being 30 minutes or 30 minutes plus. So let me know in the comments, please post. What do you think would be most helpful? Second bit of housekeeping. I've had some of you ask for me to post these as podcasts, and I'm working on it. There apparently is a way that I can use Zoom as I record there, both webinars and other things that I record in Zoom, talks that I'm doing, even videos like this, that I can then simultaneously broadcast to Facebook Live, or maybe they record and post to Facebook Live. I'm not sure. But then there's apparently a way to take the Zoom files that they're coding for me afterwards and upload those as a podcast, so that you just have the option of the video if you want to see it like this, or you have the option of listening to just the audio version of this later. So I'm working on that. Bear with me as I'm trying to be under the learning curve. Okay, so let's get into this topic. Yesterday I read a post that I had written on Monday when I was frustrated and sad and angry about some of the ways that things were being framed around the suicide of the physician, Dr. Breen, in New York. And you can go read more about those stories. But my objection and frustration and concern was that many people were touting it as being about depression. Well, even when there is depression involved, my friend Janie Cook says it so beautifully, that she says, my son did not die of suicide. He died of depression by suicide. And so I argue, though, that this was not depression. This was moral injury, moral distress, and trauma. So again, that's a whole other conversation. I read a bit about that yesterday and then talked about what are the things that we can do to take care of ourselves, to take action on our own behalf, and to do self-care. Since then, what I've been hearing from many of you is, gee, that's a great idea, but when are we supposed to do self-care? Self-care is hard to do. I've heard repeatedly in the comments the little bit of pushback even of, it's self-care is hard to do. It's not rewarded. It is punished. And so how do we do self-care? And there's a tendency to want to make it then everyone else's fault and everyone else's responsibility. That's not resilience. Resilient thinking is locus of control, keeping an internalized locus of control. What can I do to take action on my own behalf, rather than waiting for someone else to come and make my life better? Because, honey child, it ain't gonna happen. So what do we do to take action on our own behalf? We practice our own self-care and our own resilience. Now, the barriers, I have a background in health education and also in working in counseling and therapies. We understand that there are barriers that get in the way of people doing the things that they know to do and want to do, but things get in the way. So what are the barriers? Well, some of the barriers that I often hear about when talking about self-care are feeling like there is a lack of money to do some of the things that they want to do, or a lack of time, or a lack of energy. And these things can be valid. And I also argue sometimes that, all right, they can also be excuses, because I think the bigger issue aren't time, money, and the energy to do so. I think at the end of the day, it comes down much more to a question of guilt. And some of you named that. How often, when we try to practice our own self-care, do people around us invite us to feel guilty because we're taking time away, because we're doing something they want to do but don't feel like they can do for themselves? I don't know. I don't want to make up a story about what's going on in their heads. I have some ideas because I know what comes up for me and I know what I see consistently. But at the end of the day, it is more about am I going to pick up that story that I'm being selfish by doing self-care? Self-care ain't selfish. Selfishness is when I do something for me at your expense. Self-care is when I take good care of me so that I can show up well for you. If I'm not taking care of me, if I'm not in a good place with me, I don't have anything to bring to you. And so I think that guilt, though, gets in the way. My mentor, when we first started working together about 10 years ago, said, here's my number, call me anytime, text me anytime. I promise I'll read your texts. I'll listen to your messages so that you'll know that I'm with you and that you're not alone in it. But if I don't contact you back immediately, you don't get to be wounded. Right. Huh? Okay, what? And she said, yeah, if I contact you back and I'm not in a good place, I don't have enough of me, my own disciplines and practices. She's my spiritual director. So my own connection to God, to higher power. If I don't have me, how the hell can I bring anything good to you? If I'm in my own swirl, all I'm going to do is bring you my own swirl. If I'm not coming from a place of groundedness and calm and clarity and connection to something greater than me, then chances are I'm going to be bringing you from the worst portions of me rather than the best. But I promise, as soon as I have it, I will be back in touch. And so she's honored that. And she's modeled that for me, which has made it easier for me. It's given permission to me and encouragement and challenge to me to do that as well. Now, I don't say to patients and families, if I don't call you back immediately, you don't get to be wounded. No, they would not be happy with me. They would complain, and they would be right to. I have an ethical obligation to show up and to honor my obligation to show up as I've committed to as a professional. And I am still much more mindful about not instantly picking up the phone. I've kind of deconditioned myself from being Pavlov's dog that's going to go as soon as the phone rings, the electronic leash jerks, and I'm on it. I've stopped doing that. The same with emails and texts. I practice pausing and waiting and making certain I have my best me before I just respond. And so there's a way that I can do my own self-care to fill me up so that when I come to you, I have my best to bring. And so you can use that line, I'm not being selfish by doing self-care. I'm taking time away so that I can bring my best self to you. And there's a subtle but significant difference. What does the meme say that I've seen running around? Sometimes my alone time is for your safety. I'm just saying. So that's this issue of time and the issue of money and the issue of fatigue. Those are real, but I really think guilt and fear of other people not liking us come into this story. Now, that brings me to my next point. I think that there is a little bit of codependence that comes into this. Okay, there's a hell of a lot of codependence that comes into this. We in professional caregiving or as family caregivers, we often come to this care relationship with our own codependence. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because wanting to do well, wanting to care for others, being sensitive to others' emotions, having sympathy, having support. Hey, Celia, I see you. Good to see you. Glad you're here. Those things are important. They make us good, sensitive caregivers that want to excel, want to do good, notice how other people feel. Those can be good things until, like anything, if it goes to the extreme or goes amok, it can become our Achilles heel and make us toxic. We become people pleasers. We overfunction and take care of everybody else, but don't take care of ourselves. We tell them, do as I say and not as I do. We show up like a hot mess, telling them to take time to take care of themselves. And we don't do what we tell others to do. We don't take care of ourselves as well as we do for others. And wow, that's really crappy advertising. And so what would happen if we did our own self-care and then showed up and modeled what we're wanting to teach others to do for themselves? That's a more congruent message. But when we say one thing and we're doing another, that doesn't work well. But if we show up embodying, modeling what we're saying we want others to do, that's a much better space to come from. I'm coming to you not in a dress shirt like I was yesterday, but I'm in my running clothes because I'm about to go for a run after this. I have deadlines looming down my neck, And if I don't go do this run, I will not be in a good place. I will not be as productive. I won't be as grounded. My anxiety will be higher. I will reset my neurochemistry and relax my body and clear my mind and come from a more grounded, efficient, productive place if I do that. So, tending to our own people pleasing. Codependence is, in short, is this idea that I'm going to take care of you so that you will like me and I can feel okay about myself and I'll be safe. Or I'm going to take care of you so that you're going to take care of me. Instead of I take care of myself, you take care of yourself, and then we come alongside and support each other. That's a mutual interdependence rather than a codependence, an enmeshment that has really wonky ideas about I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel safe in the world. But if I can feel like the hero child in the family, then mom and daddy will like me. If I feel like the hero child and if I take care of everyone else and if I sacrifice myself in order to take care of everybody else, I martyr myself to take care of everybody else, then people will like me. They'll tell me how good I am. They'll tell me how wonderful I am. And they won't hurt me. They'll keep paying me money so that I won't wind up under the bridge with the dog. I mean, these stories that we get caught up into that get really toxic when our caring for others supersedes caring for ourselves, and our guilt and our wanting to be liked and our trying to control other people and manipulate them to like us so that we can feel safe and feel okay. Oof, I say us because I still catch myself doing it too. So when we catch ourselves over functioning, it devalues others. It minimizes others. We'll talk more about this when I talk about boundaries at some point. Let's see what else I wanted to talk about. I had production notes here, so I wasn't having to wear my glasses. The other thing is when we come from that place and not our best selves, we actually are toxic. And here's why. And we're dangerous and we hurt other people. When the research shows that when medical professionals are burned out, they don't go home and take care of themselves. They may, if they're healthy enough to realize, ooh, I either need to change this and get better and practice my own resilience, or I need to get help and support, or I need to leave and go do something else. My friend Martha Ashenbrunner was saying that I needed to retire and step away from the constant demands because it just got to the point where it was just too hard. And so we need to do healthy things for ourselves. But traditionally, though, when people get really burned out, they don't leave. They stay. Physicians, nurses, they stay. And guess what? They have a higher rate when they're burned out. They have a higher rate of medication errors, a higher rate of surgical errors, a higher rate of inaccurate diagnoses. We are dangerous when we are burned out and we're not taking care of ourselves. So, ironically, when we try to sacrifice ourselves to help others, we actually hurt them. But when we pause and get past the guilt and the invitations to shame from inside our own heads or from others and practice our own self care and our own resilience practices, we are far better for others and we decrease the risk that we're going to be dangerous for them. So I've thought about this in terms of, I was talking to someone I was mentoring earlier today, and I used the term emotional kleptomania. And I don't know where it came from. It was just the idea that we were talking about these stories that we pick up from others, the stories that we're not good enough as we are, the stories that we're not worth being taken care of, the stories that we don't deserve to take time for ourselves, the stories that we need to take care of everyone else, but not ourselves, the stories that we need to take care of ourselves by doing things like smoking and eating and being overly busy and just constantly scrolling the screen and not being present with people that we love because we don't feel like we have it to give because we haven't been taking care of ourselves. All the things that we do to numb out, to try to shortcut taking care of ourselves rather than doing the things that really do serve as protective factors and take good care of us. And again, no guilt, no shame. Of course, we want to go to the shortcuts that numb out. Of course, it feels better to eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's than it does to sit down and meditate. And so there are ways that we pick up a story that we need to do things that actually harm us rather than help us. And so these stories that we pick up from other people, the story that we need to be the hero child, the story that we don't deserve, that we're not worth, all of those stories, they're stories. They came from somebody else. Families, society, they came from somewhere else. They didn't come from us. We weren't born believing that we weren't worthy. But we picked up these stories. We were fed these stories, we swallowed them, and then we fed them to others. As Don Miguel Ruiz writes in The Voice of Knowledge, I believe it is. And so We swallow the seed that we're disconnected and they were not worthy, and it grows this whole belief system in us, and then we share it to others. But I also think of it as kind of emotional kleptomania. Like we walk around, I'm going to pick up this negative story you have about me, I'm going to pick up this story, and so we steal all these other stories from others. So let's give them back. They're not ours. We're worthy. There's nothing we can do right now to make ourselves more or less worthy of being loved and cared for. And it starts by knowing that we're worthy of it ourselves. So and then thinking 15 minutes may be the golden hour. I took a couple of minutes for housekeeping at the beginning, so we'll see. Keep chiming in and letting me know what time you think would be accurate, because I want people to be able to get access to this information. Okay, I think that is all, except I'm going to say this. Do this, please, if I can tap into your codependence to get you to do more self-care. I need you to practice your own self-care. I need you to practice worthiness, because when you do it, it gives me permission to do so. It invites me to do so. It helps me feel more safe doing my own self-care if you do it. It only takes one of us to start this. It only takes one of us to step out of the problem, and one of us to say, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing this. You may have noticed the cover art for this episode. And it's a bunch of matches and matches that are burning. And then one match has legs and feet and steps out. It comes from a video. I'm going to put a link to the Twitter feed with the video in it from the artist Juan and Valentina. Want to credit them. I took a screenshot of that in full disclosure, but I want to link and credit them with this work. This video that they put out about social distancing, that as the fire is spreading, the one match steps out and it stops the spread of the fire. So they apply that to social distancing and the coronavirus. I also apply it to, it only takes one of us in a system to step out and go, I ain't playing. I'm going to practice self-care. I'm going to practice resilience. I'm going to have better boundaries. And then it can invite other people in the system to also change and get better. Now, it may invite them to not like us and to invite us to go someplace else. Then that's our information. But if I'm letting that fear stop me from taking care of myself, I'm letting other people dictate my health and well-being, or the lack thereof. And so if I then play the victim because I'm sacrificing myself because I'm afraid that I can't find another job. Again, whole other episode. We'll talk more about that someday, about being at choice, negating victimhood. Whole other episode we'll talk about some other time. All right, so be looking for the link to that video. Think about this idea that it just takes one of us to start doing things differently. Tell me what you're doing for your self-care. Tell me how you're overcoming the guilt that comes up from others or yourself about doing self-care. And again, please let me know, what time frame do you think is doable for this? It looks like maybe 15 minutes might be the amount of brevity I can handle. All right, take care, everyone. Be good to yourselves. We'll talk later about how self-care isn't something that necessarily takes more time. It just takes being intentional about the things that we're already doing. I may talk about that tomorrow. We'll see. Let me know what else you want to hear about too. All right, guys. Mwah. Peace, love. I'm going to go for a run. Take care of yourselves. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in.